Something I didn't think I'd say, Max. At the end of the pit lane earlier, you are now race leader.
Congrats.
The moment came right after the checkered flag. Gianpiero Lambiassi's voice cracked over the radio, and what he told Max Verstappen left Red Bull absolutely stunned. It wasn't just a message, it was a confession. After 71 laps of pure chaos, a pit lane start, a puncture, and a comeback for the ages, Verstappen's calm reply turned that radio exchange into one of the most emotional moments of the season. What could make Verstappen's famously composed race engineer, the man behind every victory and every championship, suddenly break through the noise with a message that no one at Red Bull saw coming? Stay right here, because this is the untold story of the Brazilian Grand Prix, the race where Max Verstappen defied logic, rebuilt his reputation from the pit lane, and heard a radio message so raw, so unexpected, it left an entire team speechless. Brazil. Interlagos. The circuit that never forgives, never forgets. For Max Verstappen, it was supposed to be a weekend to regroup, to rebuild after a run of frustration, but what unfolded was something else entirely. From Saturday's disaster to Sunday's redemption, this was a masterclass born from chaos. The story didn't begin with triumph, it began with confusion. The RB21, normally an instrument of precision, felt unpredictable, unstable, almost wild. Verstappen's voice on the radio said it all: the car is dancing everywhere, no grip, no stability. Those words echoed through the Red Bull garage like an alarm. And for the first time in years, Max was knocked out in Q1 on pure pace. A shock that no one in Formula One saw coming. That night, the decision came. Red Bull would brake park firm, rebuild the car, and start from the pit lane. They changed everything: the floor, the suspension geometry, and even the engine. A brand new Honda power unit, fresh and untested, was fitted into the car. It was a radical move, but there was no hesitation. Verstappen didn't ask for guarantees, he simply said, "Do it. Let's make it right." The message was clear: he wasn't racing to survive. He was racing to fight. When the lights went out on Sunday, Verstappen waited at the pit exit, visor down, completely still. 20 cars thundered into turn 1, and only when the chaos settled did the green light release him. He launched into the race like a man possessed. Every lap, every braking point, every throttle application perfect. Within 10 laps, he had made more overtakes than some drivers manage in an entire weekend. Then, heartbreak: a front right puncture. No complaint, no panic. Just a calm, steady voice: front right gone. Boxing now. That composure, that focus, was the sign of something special. From that moment, the comeback began again, and it was relentless. The rebuilt RB21 came alive, balanced, aggressive, razor-sharp. Verstappen's laps were purple across the timing screen. He sliced through the field with the precision of a surgeon. Albon, Gasly, Alonso, all dispatched in perfect rhythm. The pit wall went silent, watching telemetry numbers that didn't seem possible. The car they doubted was now the fastest on track. But the real story wasn't just in the overtakes. It was in the quiet. The communication between Verstappen and Lambiassi, the calm under pressure, the silence between calls spoke volumes. Each word carried trust. Each update was precision. These two had been through everything together: dominance, pressure, and now, redemption. And as Verstappen climbed through the field, one lap at a time, the feeling in the garage changed. This wasn't a recovery. It was a resurrection. From the very first practice session on Friday, it was clear that something was wrong with the RB21. Verstappen's radio messages came through sharp and precise, not angry, but surgical in their detail. The rear is unstable. Front grip inconsistent. The car just won't rotate. He knew immediately that this wasn't a setup issue that could be solved with a simple tweak. The car felt unpredictable, out of rhythm, completely detached from his driving style. For a man who builds his dominance on control, that was the worst feeling imaginable. By Saturday, frustration had turned into disbelief. The qualifying session that followed would go down as one of the most shocking in recent memory. Verstappen, the benchmark of Formula One consistency, was knocked out in Q1 on pure performance. No rain, no yellow flags, no traffic, just a car that refused to respond. No grip. No balance. "It's terrible," he said, his tone flat, the voice of a driver who knew exactly what was happening. Inside the Red Bull garage, the silence was deafening. Engineers stared at data that made no sense, telemetry lines that told a story no one wanted to believe. Even Gianpiero Lambiase, the calmest voice on the grid, sounded subdued. The RB21 had become a problem they couldn't fix in time. The atmosphere that evening was heavy with tension. Red Bull had two choices: stick with a broken car and hope for chaos, or take the nuclear option, break park firm, rebuild everything, and start from the pit lane. It was a decision that carried both risk and pride. Starting from the pit lane meant throwing away their qualifying result, accepting scrutiny, and essentially admitting that the team had failed to give their driver the right car. But that's what leadership looks like at the highest level: owning the mistake and fixing it. Verstappen didn't argue, didn't hesitate. He looked straight at his race engineer and said, "We start from zero. Change everything." That was the turning point. Overnight, the garage transformed into a hive of relentless focus. Engineers worked under fluorescent lights, mechanics stripped the car down to its carbon bones, and the hum of drills and torque wrenches echoed through the night. They swapped out the floor for a trusted earlier version, recalibrated the suspension, and installed a brand new Honda power unit, fresh, powerful, and perfectly mapped to Verstappen's driving style. They were rebuilding not just a car, but belief. By dawn, the RB21 sat gleaming under the floodlights, lower, leaner, and ready. Verstappen arrived quietly, calm but determined. He didn't need to talk. The team could feel it in his presence, that controlled intensity that separates champions from everyone else. Red Bull had gambled everything on one idea, that if they gave Max a car he could trust, he'd do the rest. When night fell over Interlagos, the Red Bull garage turned into something between an operating room and a war zone. Mechanics worked with the focus of surgeons, the air thick with the smell of oil and adrenaline. The RB21 was stripped bare, no shortcuts, no patches, just a complete teardown. They weren't tuning a car anymore, they were rebuilding one from scratch. The old components that had betrayed Verstappen were pulled out and replaced with proven elements from earlier in the season. The Austin spec floor went back on, the suspension geometry was reset, and the rake was adjusted to restore that razor-sharp front-end bike Max thrives on. But the boldest move of the night came at the heart of the car. They dropped in a brand new Honda power unit, one that hadn't turned a wheel in competition. It was raw, untouched, and packed with potential. A new engine means unknown variables, fuel mapping, torque behavior, even heat response. It was a massive gamble. But Red Bull didn't flinch. They trusted their data, their instincts, and their driver. Verstappen's feedback from the day before became their blueprint. Every change was tailored to how he feels the car, how he balances rotation on entry, and how he manages traction on exit. It was engineering by intuition, the kind that separates championship-winning teams from the rest. By the time dawn broke, the garage lights dimmed and the RB21 stood reborn. Sleeker, lower, alive. Verstappen arrived with his usual calm, helmet in hand, eyes sharp. He didn't need his speech, his focus spoke louder than any words could. He climbed into the cockpit as if nothing had happened the day before. The engine fired, and the deep growl that filled the garage was different. More aggressive. More alive. That sound meant one thing: Red Bull's risk had worked. When the pit lane opened, Verstappen rolled out quietly, testing each gear, each throttle response. Everything was perfect. The car rotated on command, gripped when it needed to, and stayed composed through the fast middle sector. The team could see it in the telemetry: balance restored, traction recovered, power unleashed. Then came the start. As the grid launched into turn 1, Verstappen waited behind the barrier, visor down, heartbeat steady. The green light flicked on, and he hit the throttle. Instantly, the RB21 shot forward, smooth and stable, the rebuilt engine singing down the straight. Within 5 laps, he had already picked off half the backmarkers. His overtakes were surgical, braking 10 meters later, opening the throttle earlier, never locking up once. The car that had betrayed him a day earlier now moved like it was part of him. Then, the test. Lap 13. A front right puncture. The radio came alive, front right gone. Boxing now. His tone was ice-cold, focused. No panic, no frustration, just a decision. He pitted, switched tires, and rejoined last. And then, he started again. From that moment onward, Verstappen drove with mechanical precision. His lap times were a metronome, each sector faster than the last. The data told the story before the commentators did. The rebuilt RB21 was now the fastest car on the track. What Red Bull had achieved overnight wasn't luck. It was the perfect marriage of faith and logic. The engineers had built the machine, but Verstappen gave it life. It was the kind of recovery only possible when trust between driver and team runs deeper than data. By the time Verstappen had sliced his way back into the top 10, the race had entered a delicate rhythm, the kind where strategy can make or break everything. Red Bull's pit wall watched the data pour in, Verstappen's tire wear was minimal, his lap time stable, and his confidence soaring. While most teams committed to the standard two-stop plan, Red Bull saw something no one else did. Their driver wasn't losing grip, he was gaining pace. The answer was obvious to the engineers, but radical to the strategists: go for 3 stops and unleash Verstappen. Lambiassi's voice came over the radio, calm but charged with intent. "Max, we're going to go aggressive. Plan C confirmed. Push now." There was no hesitation, no debate. Verstappen's reply was short, confident, absolute. "Understood. Let's go." From that moment on, the tone of the race changed completely. Verstappen wasn't driving defensively, he was hunting. The RB21 was reborn, balanced perfectly, and Max was driving as if connected to it by instinct. He began to carve through the midfield like a surgeon, with a scalpel, clean, precise, and ruthless. Albon, Gasly, Alonso all gone in the blink of an eye. Every pass was a display of mastery, every braking point measured to perfection. By lap 30, Verstappen's pace was unmatched. His sectors were purple, his tire management flawless. While others struggled to maintain grip, Verstappen pushed harder, his lap times dropping by tenths every circuit. The team couldn't believe what they were seeing. The car they'd built overnight was now the fastest on the track.